very excited. Susan Kaye Quinn, welcome to Middle Grade Ninja.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
So tell esteemed audience, because you know your resume better than I do. Tell esteemed audience all the things that you've done and why it's so wonderful that we're about to hear from you.
Oh, well, I don't know about that second part, but I have written a lot of books. I've got about 34 novels across 2 pen names, and that doesn't count the short stories and other things like that. I write science fiction under my public name, Susan Kaye Quinn, and romance under a pen name that I don't talk about. I don't talk about the pen name, but I do talk about the books. So, um, why should you listen to what I have to say? Because I want to help people. I want to make sure that I have had such a great experience with discovering this creative side of my life and turning it into a business that I really want other people to be able to do that, not only to enrich their lives, but the rest of the world. I think we all really benefit when people are finding their bliss and finding their dreams and actually, having a paycheck so that they can support their families and have the security that comes with that. I don't know. Is that good enough?
Paychecks are hugely important.
Yes.
And you've also got a background that's just so diverse and so wonderful for somebody who's coming to fiction, because you've actually done things beyond just read books. You worked for NASA. You've been in politics.
Yes, I had a life before I became an author, and I got a PhD in engineering and worked for NASA and did some other stuff. Worked for GE Aircraft Engines for a while, did some research in global warming, and then ended up staying home with my kids for a little while. And after that, I'm sort of like transitioning from being home and being very intensely into family for a while. I eased back into the world of working stuff again by running for school board, and I was elected and served for 4 years there, and that was very interesting. And then somewhere in the middle there, I picked up the pen and sort of rediscovered this thing that I love to do, which is very interesting because I didn't have a conception of myself as a writer before that point. Although, as a recent trip over Christmas, I went back home and went back through some of my old stuff from when I was a kid, and I found this box in my closet that had a bunch of old short stories I had written and a screenplay that my friends had starred in. I completely had forgotten about all of this stuff. And I rediscovered it. I'm like, okay, I have to reset this idea that I just started writing 10 years ago. I was doing this stuff when I was a kid. And I kind of left that all behind to go do engineering. But now I'm bringing it full circle again and going back to what I did as a kid, but also just recently and this year, more integrating a lot of my technical knowledge into my stories, getting a little more techie with some of my stuff, even in my romance, which was lots of fun. So yeah, I'm very lucky to have had a very interesting life so far, and I plan to continue that for quite some time.
Well, I continue to maintain that Susan Kaye Quinn is who I want to be when I grow up one of these days. So I bet you're the kind of person that, just from the outside looking in, doesn't go halfway on anything. I bet when you were a stay-at-home mom, you were the mom that other moms wish they were, that you go full in on anything that you do. Am I right about that?
I certainly, yeah, I would confess to that. I'm a very all-in kind of person. I want the things that I do to mean something and to be worthwhile. And if it's means something and it's worthwhile, I'm going to give it everything I've got and just go for it. And if it works out, great. And if it doesn't work out, I'll find out what the next thing is, and I'll have learned something along the way. And having that sort of approach is actually something I advocate for people who are authors. And a lot of times authors they're watching podcasts like this, or they're reading books, or they're trying to get information about the business, like, what do I do to succeed? How do I make it all work? And it's not like I actually went and got the answer to those questions from someone else. What I did primarily, and not that I didn't read books and network with other authors, because I did a ton of that too.
Well, I'm actually here to get the answer from you. So
I know. And so here's the answer. Okay, are you ready?
I am.
All right. The answer is, it's up to you to figure it out. Totally useless unless you know what I mean by that. And what I mean by that is, and that is an actual real answer. Okay. The real answer is that you need to do whatever it is that is your best guess. Come up with a theory about how book selling works. Put in a plan, some kind of plan that actually executes on that theory. Take some measurements to see, this is my engineering side coming out. Take some measurements to see if it's actually working, if your theory matches up with reality. And if it doesn't, pivot and change your theory and start over and reiterate. And that's really all I have done all along, is from the very first trilogy that I published back in 2011, when self-publishing was just getting started. And I was looking around and I was seeing other people do this. And I was like, hey, that seems like it's possible. Like there's people actually doing this now and making a living at it. And it's like for real. So can I do that? I don't know. Can I do it? I'm just going to try. I've got this novel that I had actually out to agents and publishers and stuff. And so I pulled that back and I said, okay, I'm going to make a plan. I'm going to publish a trilogy. I'm going to do it in a year. And I'm going to do everything that I know how to do to make it work. And I had a very specific knowledge set at that point. And most of it was like up for grabs because the industry was brand new. So you really could kind of make up the rules as you went along. So I just made up some rules. I'm like, well, it seems like people would want to read the book before they buy it, in some senses, get some reviews ahead of time. That seems to make sense, and I borrowed some from traditional publishing and borrowed some of my own ideas, made a literal marketing plan. And I said, okay, in 6 months, I'm just going to go all in. I'm going to do the trilogy no matter what. I'm going to put some money into, advertising and making copies of the book to give to people and do various things. And in 6 months, I'm just going to see if it works. And if it works, great. And if it doesn't work, then I'll have to rethink whether I really want to do this or not, Well, 6 months later, it was selling like gangbusters. And obviously it demonstrated the possibility. I didn't assume that just because those books sold that I was somehow set for life. Right. And then all my books would be golden and all of them would sell forever. It wasn't like that.
Which is what made it so ironic when that's what happened, right?
Well, actually, no. No, it's not.
And also, really quick for people who aren't total Susan Kaye Quinn nuts like I am, the original trilogy we're talking about was the Mind Jack trilogy, right? Beginning with Open Minds, which is free to download as an ebook now anytime anybody's watching this. Do I have that right?
That is correct. And that trilogy is the first trilogy. I actually wrote more of those books later on, 5 years later. But that first trilogy, I wrote it, and then I moved on to other books. And it wasn't a straight golden path of everything that I wrote magically sold. People will look at the outside and say, well, you're successful now, and you've been successful all along. And both of those things are true, but that does not mean that everything worked. And in fact, a lot of things I tried didn't work, spectacularly failed. And that was tremendous learning experience for me. And whenever things weren't trending the way that I wanted, I pivoted and I said, okay, now my model worked before, but now it's not working anymore because the publishing industry has changed fundamentally. And I have to change to adapt to it. And that's one of the things that I've seen, that a lot of authors, when something changes, they'll look to other people and say, well, now what do I do? And it's like, well, I can't tell you. I don't know what the future is going to bring. You just have to try something, see if it works. If it doesn't work, change it and try again and keep trying some more. And that sort of persistence is everything in this business. And you have to persist in the right way, though. You can't just persist with well, I'm just going to follow this path for 7 years and eventually it'll take off by itself by some kind of magic pixie dust, because that doesn't work either. Either it starts to go, you have to commit some, you can't pivot every day, right? You need to have some kind of middle grade, give yourself a month or 6 months or a trilogy, some set period of time to say, okay, is this working? And if it's not, then do something different. Don't do the same thing again, because if you do the same thing again, you're going to get the same result, probably, unless some magic pixie dust comes along, because that does happen.
Yeah, just ask Well, you know what? I don't author shame, so I'm not going to say who got the magic pixie dust, but we all know some examples. And if you're thinking of one, esteemed audience, rest assured that's the one I was going to say. Um, but let me bring back, as you say that, I know that one of your big points is making an author mission statement for yourself,
Mhm.
starting with a clear goal so that when you reach that goal or fail to do so, you know what that goal was rather than kind of changing it on the fly. Do I have that right?
Well, yes and no. I think you absolutely have to change it on the fly because life changes and you change, hopefully, and definitely the industry changes. And so I wrote my first mission statement before I ever published a book, even my very, very first book, which actually went through a publisher, a small press. And even before that, I was writing what my core ideas were. I wanted to sell a bunch of books, but it wasn't because I wanted to get rich or famous. It was because I wanted to connect with a lot of people. I had things to say, and I wanted those things to have an impact on a lot of people. And so that's what sales means to me. And so having that sort of statement of purpose and that's mine, right? Someone else might be like, I have a certain uh, art that needs to be created, and it's just an expression that I need to excavate from my soul and get out into the world because that's why I'm here. They might have that sort of artistic mission or vision, and for
Isn't
them,
it nice when those two things align? When that's the book of your soul, and it also happens to be suited to the market, or do those two things align?
of course they do. Sometimes they do. Not always, and often not at all. Okay? Because there's no guarantees that what you excavate from your soul is what other people want to read. And that doesn't mean that it's bad in any way. You may be ahead of your time, or you may just be very unique. And those things are beautiful and special. But that doesn't necessarily get paid in money. There are a lot of things in our society that don't get paid in money, but we tend to be a very money focused society. So like if it's not paid in money, then somehow it's not as worthy, it's not as worthwhile. And I would just say, being a mom is one of the most amazing worthwhile things I've ever done that was never paid in money. In fact, it's a net loss in money, a serious net loss in money. I'm
No, you're when
still
are
paying
going to
money for
become
that.
very wealthy. They're going to take care of you in old age. It's
Oh
all going to pay.
no. No, no, no. They're all going to follow their hearts and do, things that don't make any money too. So no, I'm not worried about my children because I think I have given them something way more important than money, which is a sense of who they are and the love that will carry them forward to finding things that are important to them. So mission accomplished with that. And I'm almost got, I've got one out the door, one on the way, and the third one is a couple years from. So I feel a lot of pride with that. And it's, again, never going to be reflected in a paycheck. So I,
But you
I
have made the world better, three people at a time, right?
that's right. That's what I think. So, and so I encourage authors to embrace those aspects of themselves. Like I really do embrace that there's a part of me that has stories to tell and wants to have impact, and that's what's most important, not if I ever make another dime of money from it. On the other hand, money is great and it does great things, and it allows me to, for example, pay for my kids to go to college wherever they want, so it enables their dreams. So I think we tend to shame ourselves and other people, but first we shame ourselves and saying, well, you shouldn't be such a wild-eyed artist and wanting to write the book of your heart. Well, of course you should. You should absolutely do that. And we'll shame ourselves on the other end and say, don't be a sellout and just sell whatever, the least common denominator is of the ragtag public and what they want to read. It's like, well, what's wrong with writing things that people want to read? There's nothing wrong with that. So, wherever you're coming at from it, just know yourself. Know what's important to you. And if there's things in tension like that, that's okay too. Acknowledge those things and find a way to do both, or find a way to address, put one of those to bed if they need to go to bed so you can focus on the other for a while, or vice versa. That's what I do, and that's what I encourage people to do.